Good evening, everybody at Cancer Support. My name is Sandie Birdsall, and I'm sure that Beth has probably already introduced me as Sandie. But because I don't know a lot of you, that actually says a lot about the ongoing issues I have after my health crisis, that I'm not able to be out and about and with you in person because of health issues. And I have to say that I did live through a nearly fatal brain hemorrhage back on December 1st of 2008, but because of that event, my life truly has been forever changed. And it's people like you who want to know, need to know, and are those warriors who try to support those of us who are going through really cataclysmic times in our lives. So thank you for your love and support for your loved ones and friends. Beth asked me to tell a little bit about the event. Some of you know, some of you don't. It's 5 years ago now, so in a way it seems like a rather distant event. But we had come to Brian just barely a year before I had this health crisis. As I think about it, it's like most people at Brian don't really know me as I was before this event. I was working full-time as a county supervisor for a social services program. I had a son who was really involved with travel soccer, so I was the ultimate soccer mom, kind of the parent fan club leader, and community clubs, groups, church worship team. It's kind of like I was just busy 24/7, and kind of the life of the party type, just kind of my job was to kind of create a ruckus wherever I went and try to embarrass Brent as much as possible. And
I'll say amen to that.
And so that's how people knew me, as just a really outgoing, involved person. And probably none of you know me that way, because I'm not that way anymore. And that's part of my ongoing struggle. December 1st. Back to that day. By that time, we had just been here a little over a year. I already had nearly 50 piano students, so I was super busy teaching in my own home studio, worked at Schmidt, quite a few students there. All of our kids had been home for Thanksgiving. We had a Libyan young physician studying English in a program where Amy was teaching in Chicago. Had a great time showing him around the city. Monday morning, went to a jazzercise class, as I normally did. Had a good workout, came home, showered, stepped out of the shower, bent over to towel dry my hair, and just the most incredible explosion inside of my head that you can imagine. I immediately, as I was bending over, started vomiting, collapsed to the floor, lost my vision. I knew it was bad, and just a matter of time until I would likely lose consciousnness. Miraculously, I remembered where my cell phone was. I was able to pull myself down the few stairs to the counter where it was laying and get a hold of it, crawl slowly, make my way back to the bedroom, haul myself up onto the bed, and realized I could hardly focus to find the numbers to call speed dial to get a hold of Brent. Again, miraculously, he picked up his phone. Oftentimes he's with people, he's busy, he takes messages, but that day, again, miraculously, he picked up the phone, and I was able to kind of gasp and communicate my distress. He immediately rushed away. I hung up. He called 911, and then just it was a matter of time until the EMS was there. I have a few images of being loaded up and carted off and spending time in that ambulance, and then I really remember very little for about 3 weeks. So I think probably Brent has the most memories that he can share at this point, so I'll let him sit in this chair.
Sandie told you that she called me. I remember it very distinctly at about 12:30 on a Monday morning. She's had health issues, but she sounded totally different than she's ever sounded before. She said, "Brent, I think I'm having a stroke." I didn't take a whole lot of time to question her. I ran out the office. As I was going home, I called 911. They said that they were already on the line with Sandie and that people were on the way. There's a blur of activity. You start to have a high appreciation for first responders. Police showed up, a big fire truck showed up, an ambulance showed up. They saw Sandie and her situation. I tried to give a little bit of medical history. They carted her off to Southdale, and we began a 34-day saga. 16 days in ICU, 5 days in neurology there at Southdale. Then we switched over to Fairview Riverside for 13 days of rehab. And it was the hardest thing that we've ever experienced. And so I think Sandie and I will share a little bit about some of the experiences while we were there. But a couple of them that I remember is the one that I've been around enough sick people that when the doctor said, "We're going to keep your wife here in ICU for 10 to 14 days." And I said, "Nobody stays in ICU for 14 days. That's when I started to learn a little bit about the severity of it. The statistics of brain aneurysms, which Sandie experienced, was that a third of the people that have them die right there on the spot. Of the people that survive that initial attack, a third of them die within a week. The people that survive a week, another third of those folks suffer really serious lifelong deficits, physical deficits because of that. So Sandie is a survivor, and we are forever grateful for that. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the impact that she still experiences as a result of that brain aneurysm.
So the next topic is self-advocacy. And that, I must admit, is a very difficult thing for me, and maybe for many people. Probably my situation is a little different in that my husband has been in full-time ministry our entire married life, and I have to say that even before I met him, I also felt called to full-time ministry. So it was a deep and very personal calling of my own to pour out my life to benefit others and to bring them to Christ, and the great healing and hope that would take place in their lives spiritually with a relationship with Christ. So it is also a passion of mine. But I'm very mindful, therefore, of not doing anything in any way to damage my husband's ministry, which means I don't want to be seen as a whiner, a complainer, a person who pushes forth my own interests and needs above the needs of others. And so oftentimes, having gone through that filter of thinking and perspective, I just don't say anything, because I don't want to muddy the waters or create waves or whatever you might want to call it. But therefore, I don't often talk about my needs or probably advocate for myself and what I need. So my message for those of you who are attending cancer support tonight is that people who are going through these incredible health crises desperately need you to be their advocates. People who are in a weakened condition, who are very ill, who are barely able to function on a daily basis to get the necessities done and to maintain relationships with the immediate family, that's really about all they got. And they really need people advocating for them with health professionals, just household needs, paying bills, shopping, those kinds of things that have become impossible for them to do, but for which they may feel too much pride to ask for help. So your role in understanding, supporting, and helping is just amazingly important. And there is no greater time in a person's life when they've gone through a grief or a loss, like many people do. I would say, for me, my sense or the size of my community has shrunk, and it keeps getting smaller and smaller. I liken it to maybe you've had a conversation or tried to have a conversation with a person who doesn't speak English. And so you kind of do sign language for a little while and kind of refer to the weather or time or clothing and kind of smile and nod your head. But after about 10 minutes, it's pretty exhausting. And you realize in order for a true conversation or a true friendship to develop, it's got to be a two-way street. And for a person who is a shut-in or an invalid, they do not have the resources or ability to reciprocate. And it's nobody's fault. But I have had to realize that my world is increasingly becoming my immediate family and those few safe friends. And it's difficult for me to pursue much else, though my heart would like to, that I would like to take on the needs and burdens of other people and be able to get out there and do things for them. The fact is that is nearly impossible. So every day I pray for opportunities and the grace to know how I can still feel productive and help others. But I think it's important for people to understand, for people who are shut in long term because of these illnesses, they are not going to be able to reciprocate, and that it's a very sad feeling. And so the more you can pop in, be with them, I mean, they understand that your time and resources is, they are limited. And so whatever you do is going to be treasured beyond belief. So those are my comments about self-advocacy. See what Brent has to say.
Some of my thoughts about advocacy are exactly what I did as a spouse, and that is I asked lots of questions. I was there at the hospital almost all the time. When they made changes, when they ordered tests, I just wanted to be involved in all of that. I oftentimes say that to parishioners. You have a right as a consumer to know everything that's going on with your loved one. So from my professional experience, I didn't have any hesitation to kind of advocate on behalf of Sandie. But the other side of it is that there's a lot of things that go on that we laymen have no idea. I remember one time talking to one of the neurosurgeons, and I had to sign papers, and I said, so what if I wouldn't sign them? They said, well, we'd go ahead and do it anyways because your wife's going to die if we don't. And so, there's some things that I guess you need to know, but you also need to know there's things that you don't know, and you have to have some level of trust of the people that are treating your loved one. I guess down the pike, when I talk about advocacy, I recognize what Sandie needed was rest and quiet, and this is one of those areas. As pastor of pastoral care, I have to say that my hospital experience taught me I didn't want people coming to the hospital. It only created stress for Sandie, and it didn't help me. And so I kind of, through the church office, said, no visitors, and I really meant it. Unfortunately, a few people either didn't hear that or they thought that they were good enough friends that they could come anyways. And it wasn't appreciated. And so that's why pastorally I say to people, so-and-so is in the hospital, and I say, do they want me to visit, or do you want me to visit them? So I think that I respect people's space, but I want to be there as soon as they want a pastor there. Down the pike, I think that probably both Sandie and I are on the non-assertive side, and that is a place where probably we need to push ourselves. But as she said earlier, sometimes caregivers or people from the church can say, I know that things are difficult, but I'm going to carve out Thursday morning and I'm going to do whatever is most helpful. What would that be? Because when we say to a person, call me if you need anything, most likely they won't call. But if you kind of put yourself into their life and say, my time is available, I want to help you, but what's the most important thing? Let me give you an example. When Sandie was home from the hospital, people brought food. That is a time-honored tradition within the church. We had all of our kids home. Someone brought a whole bunch of food, and I hate to say it, but no one particularly liked it. After that, somebody asked how they could help Sandie, and Sandie said, could you stop by the store, or when you're shopping, can you get me these 4 ingredients? And we were able to cook food that we really liked the way that we liked it. And so those are ways that I think that I learned through Sandie's process, that people want to help, a pastor wants to help, but they really need to know what the person really wants and needs. And so hopefully I've learned to be a lot more responsive pastorally as I watched my wife go through this situation as well.
The area that Beth asked us to address is the component of faith. And that, I think, is the most incredibly important part of all. I know some people come through really difficult circumstances and they are angry at God, or they wonder how God could allow such a thing to happen. But, honestly, that just never occurred to me. I've just always believed that, our lives are measured in hours, minutes, days, maybe years, but there are no guarantees from the moment we're born. So why should we somehow expect that we are special enough to not have to experience some suffering and adversity? So I felt that up until that point in my life I had just been incredibly blessed, and so this was something obviously God had allowed into my life that was important, that it was meant to teach me something I could not have learned any other way. And I believe that to this day. There is just no other way I could have learned the things that I have learned today without this experience. And so if anything, my faith has become stronger, deeper. There's something about having walked through a very dark and lonely and difficult place for many reasons, whether it's loss of a loved one or a physical experience, a health crisis. I mean, it's a crucible experience in your life, and you can either choose to become stronger and choose to let God work through your life and make you better according to His plan, or I guess you can do the cowardly thing and just look for people to blame, because life is just full of tough experiences and hurts and sorrows, and incredibly naive of people to think somehow they should be exempt from that if they are God's children. It's like, no, because we are God's children, we will go through those things, but we will show the world how to go through them with grace and perseverance and a certain amount of joy amidst the suffering. That's what we're commanded to do. So I hear people talk about recovery. Have you fully recovered? It's like, well, I don't know. Recovery is just kind of a weird word. To me, that means are you back to what you were before, as though what I was before was better? And it's like, I don't necessarily think that. Yeah, I grieve the things that I lost, the things that I am not able to do that I used to do. So I grieve the loss of those things. But anytime there is a loss, if you lose a loved one, you have to understand that they are gone. Until you get to heaven, you are likely not going to see them. And yet you treasure those memories, those times with them. So I treasure those healthy years of my life, and I miss that person who I was and the things I could do. But I would never want to go back there, because I realize how shallow I was, how little understanding and maturity I had about life, how little I valued the precious people around me, and how very fragile life is, and how easily lost or changed in a moment. So if anything, my faith and my strength have been resolved, and I'm accepting my limitations. I can't say I have fully embraced my limitations. I still struggle. I get frustrated. I get depressed about the isolation, because I am not a person that likes to be alone, stuck at home. I like to be out being with people. And it's like, God, how ironic is that who I am is now who I can't be. And so every day it's like, what is God trying to teach me about how I can still be who I am, but in a new way? And it changes you, but it's not a bad thing. We grow, we mature, we become better, we become deeper, more empathetic for people who have gone through struggles and really deep losses. So I am very thankful. Though difficult, I would never trade having gone through this experience for anything, because of the incredible leaps and bounds of faith that I was able to build during these years. So, yep, it just, as I said, strengthened my faith and my resolve, and I would not trade it for the world. Thank you.
As Sandie talked about her own faith experience, she has grown. She looks at life much differently now than she did 5.5 years ago. From my own perspective, I would say probably two things that stand out in my mind. Number one, I remember very clearly talking with Roger in the coffee shop there at Fairview, Southdale, a number of years ago. And one of the things I said to him was, you know, Roger, everything that I've been saying to other people about their own crisis situations, I have found it to be true in my own life. God is faithful. The Holy Spirit sustains us. And that was a kind of a moment of affirmation, because it felt like what I had been giving out to other people in many situations as a pastor, I now, on the receiving end, felt like, yeah, this is for real. And it was very comforting. Probably one other area that I have grown in my own understanding is just the fact that faith is just what we define it as, and that is that we don't know for sure how things will turn out. We cannot see things, and so faith is learning to trust God in times of uncertainty. And so during those very uncertain days while Sandie was hospitalized for 34 days, that was probably the most turbulent time in my life. Seeing her grow, recover for 6 months, and in some ways see some progress, but in some ways be frustrated, and not knowing what it would be like being told, wait for 2 years, give yourself a chance to heal. And 2 years came and went, and there was still progress, but there were still those deficits. And so I think what I've noticed is that when I talk about faith, I say looking forward, that's where Christian people can express faith and hope. When we look backwards and we're saying we want the good old days back again, there's oftentimes a sense of remorse or regret. Why can't those days be back again? But we trust God. And that's what we've learned to do, is that we are people of faith, and we need to trust God will care for us in the future, just like He has in the past.